At a party I helped fund, she publicly introduced me as her driver. Although I assisted in covering the cost of the event, she made this announcement loud enough for everyone to hear. When I later confronted her about it in private, she dismissively rolled her eyes and retorted, "You should be grateful I even allowed you in." Without arguing or raising my voice, I simply picked up my jacket and left. 2 weeks passed, and her parents unexpectedly appeared at my doorstep. It's ironic how you can spend years with someone and still remain oblivious to their true nature. Perhaps the warning signs were always present, and I chose to overlook them. Nonetheless, the incident from last month irrevocably altered the dynamics of our relationship. The backstory is this. I am a 32-year-old man who had been seeing Susan, a 29-year-old woman, for approximately 2 years. Our paths crossed at a bar trivia night organized by mutual acquaintances. Susan possessed striking beauty, confidence, and an innate ability to draw people in. I was captivated from the start. Susan holds a lower-tier support position in the department at a downtown tech firm, where she often boasted as if she were in charge. On the other hand, I operate a small construction business as a general contractor, a career path I painstakingly built from scratch. I take pride in my job. It not only covers the bills, but also provides extra income. Everything seemed ideal with us when we first started dating. We used to spend weekends together exploring the city, trying out new restaurants, and watching indie films at her favorite small theater. Looking back, there were subtle signs that things were not quite right. Small remarks about my attire, subtle teasing about my vehicle, and the fact that she never introduced me to any of her colleagues in 2 years. Despite these signs, I chose to overlook them because I was deeply in love. A month ago, Susan mentioned a lavish client appreciation event that her company was organizing at a fancy downtown hotel. She was stressed about ensuring everything went smoothly. While casually scrolling through her phone one night, she mentioned that Jessica from It was bringing her lawyer boyfriend to the event. "Could you bring someone?" she asked one evening. Without much thought, I suggested I could come along for moral support. She hesitated briefly, and I noticed it. "Dear, I think it would be great if you joined us. It's essentially a gathering of corporate individuals discussing mundane work matters." Since I knew that she had been under financial pressure lately due to the increase in her lease, and she had been alluding to the possibility of having to relocate, I volunteered to assist with some of the expenses. I ended up covering the cost of her new dress, $450, the gift basket for her boss, $200, and various other party supplies. Although it wasn't an insignificant amount, it certainly wasn't spare change either. On the night of the event, I dressed up elegantly, donning my finest suit that I usually reserve for important client meetings, and even got a fresh haircut. When I arrived to pick Susan up in my truck, she seemed preoccupied and barely acknowledged my appearance, simply inquiring about the gift basket. As we approached the hotel, I sensed her tension beside me. While walking through the lobby towards the ballroom, she subtly distanced herself by walking slightly ahead of me. Abruptly, she proposed, "Maybe you should wait in the bar. I need to tend to some matters first." "I'll accompany you," I responded. You know, I could help carry something, I offered as we made our way into the ballroom. She seemed irritated but didn't protest as we entered the beautifully decorated space. I was taken aback by the impressive setup. An open bar, elegant appetizers being served, and the ambience set with mood lighting. Spotting some of her colleagues, Susan made a beeline towards them with Lee following closely behind. One of the women in a chic black dress remarked on how great everything looked before turning to me and asking for an introduction. There was a brief pause before Susan interjected, stating that I was her driver for the evening. The awkward silence that followed was palpable, as her colleagues seemed puzzled, clearly skeptical of the notion that I was a driver based on my attire. "Your driver?" she questioned, raising an eyebrow. Susan, trying to mask the situation with forced laughter, confirmed the false claim and mentioned that I had dropped her off but was now leaving. Feeling a wave of disappointment, I discreetly guided Susan away from the group to ask her in a composed tone, what was that all about? She rolled her eyes and glanced over her shoulder to check if anyone was watching. "Look, these are important people. My career is at stake here. You should just wait in the car," she told me. I gently reminded her I helped pay for this party and bought your dress. Her words cut deep as she looked at me with disdain and said, "You should be grateful I even let you in." In that moment, everything became clear. The signs and comments were not just quirks. This was who she truly was. Without arguing or raising my voice, I simply nodded and walked away. I retrieved my jacket from the coat check and drove home in silence. As I got to my place, my phone was flooded with missed calls and texts from Susan. asking where I was and calling me dramatic. Ignoring them all, I turned off my phone and opened the beer. I felt oddly calm, as if I had finally woken up. In a lengthy dream the following morning, Susan appeared at my doorstep. Her eyes were swollen as if she had been crying, yet her makeup remained flawless. Susan was always camera ready. What happened last night? She demanded, her tone accusatory. You just left me there, and I had to get an Uber home. Leaning against the doorframe, I hesitated to invite her inside. You called me your driver, it was just a joke. You're so sensitive, I responded. Those people are important to my career, and I didn't want them to assume I was involved with a contractor, I finished her sentence. She seemed slightly ashamed at my words. That's not what I meant. It's just complicated office politics, she explained, her words interrupted by tears. Susan was skilled at shedding tears on cue. She expressed her regret, attributing her actions to stress from impressing her boss. She promised to make it up to me, even suggesting a weekend getaway for just the two of us. I love you, she said, touching my face. You know that, right? Last night was a mistake. I was being foolish. I pretended to believe her, eventually inviting her in, feeling the mix of emotions. She brought me her coffee, listened to her explanations and excuses. Shortly after she left, seemingly convinced that everything was fine between us. In the following days, things appeared to go back to normal on the surface. Susan was especially affectionate, sending me heart emojis in her text messages and discussing our future together. Then, about a week after the party incident, she called me with excitement in her voice, exclaiming, "Babe, guess what? My birthday is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking of hosting a dinner for some colleagues at the new fancy restaurant in Telly's." That sounds nice, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm a little short on cash this month after the party and all. Would you be able to help pay for it? She asked, knowing my likely response. Would you? It would mean so much to me. It's just for my work friends, you know. A networking opportunity, she explained, noticeably not inviting me to attend. How much are we looking at? I inquired. Probably around $1,200 for the private dining room. They require a card on file, she informed me. I can put my card down for you, I offered, preemptively knowing where this was heading. Just let me know. Let me know when you need it. You're the best, she exclaimed with a squeal. I'll come by tomorrow to pick it up. The following day she arrived and I handed her my credit card. She accepted it with a smile, unaware that it was not my usual card. What time should I arrive? I casually inquired. Her smile dimmed slightly. Oh, actually, it's just going to be a gathering with colleagues, mainly shop talk, nothing exciting. Probably wouldn't enjoy it. Got it, I replied, nodding in understanding. No problem. Thanks for letting me know, she said, giving me a quick kiss before leaving. You're the best. On the evening of her dinner, I contacted my credit card company and reported the card I had given her as lost. They promptly canceled it and issued a new one. I then dressed in my finest suit, even more upscale than the one I had worn to her work event, and made my way to Antonelli's. Instead of entering through the main door, I chose a seat at the bar area with a partial view of the private dining room, concealed by a decorative divider. And then they arrived. At around 7:30, Susan appeared captivating in a new dress I hadn't seen her wear before, surrounded by her colleagues. Among them was the woman from the previous party who had mistakenly referred to me as her driver. A man I didn't recognize was also present, frequently placing his hand on the small of Susan's back. Rather than moving away from his touch, she seemed to be embracing it. As I sipped on the scotch, I observed them laughing, taking photos, and raising glasses and toasts. It was evident that Susan was reveling in the spotlight, exuding confidence and animation unlike her usual self as an IT support person who often voiced complaints. At 9:45, as expected, the server presented the check to their table. Susan boldly handed over my credit card with a smug grin, dismissing her colleagues' offers to split the bill. I could almost hear her saying, "It's my birthday. Please allow me to treat you." The server departed with the card, and time passed as I anxiously watched. Ultimately, I saw him return leaning down to, speaking quietly to Susan. Her expression shifted from confusion to panic. She appeared to be checking her banking app on her phone, then began typing frantically, likely texting. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Susan tried to convey the urgency by informing me that something was wrong with my card and that it was being declined. Despite her distress, I chose to stay silent, calmly sipping my scotch as the situation escalated. Susan, now visibly flustered, struggled to make excuses to her colleagues as she attempted to use other cards in her wallet, all of which were already at their limits. Having heard her complain about her credit card debt the week before, I was aware of her financial struggles. After receiving 5 increasingly desperate texts from her, I finally responded on a more discreet note. Look behind you. Her confusion was evident as she read the message, followed by a sharp turn to search the room until her gaze met mine at the bar. The color drained from her face as she realized the truth. With a sense of closure, I stood up, settled my drink bill, and departed from the scene. Slowly making my way towards their private dining room, I retrieved an envelope from the pocket of my jacket. The room fell into a sudden hush as I entered, eliciting a mix of surprise and recognition from the guests seated around the table. Susan's expression turned to one of horror as she locked eyes with me. Isn't this your driver? One of them inquired, prompting me to offer a polite smile to the gathering. Actually, I was, her boyfriend for the past 2 years, I explained, beginning to lay out several photographs from the envelope that depicted our moments together at various occasions. The photos told a story of our time spent together at events, holidays, and vacations. As I unfolded them on the table, I proceeded to mention the instances where I have financially supported her, such as paying for her dress at the client party, gifting a basket to her boss, and being referred to as her driver as a result. The room was consumed by an uncomfortable silence, with the man who had been standing close to Susan quickly distancing himself. Susan's boss, a stern figure seated at the head of the table, fixated her gaze on the photos with a skeptical look. Alex, can we discuss this privately? Susan's voice now tinged with embarrassment, she insisted, her face flushed a deep shade of crimson. No need, I responded pleasantly, offering to address the matters right then and there as I paused. To wish you a happy birthday and inform you that the card was canceled due to being reported lost yesterday. Her reaction was immediate and devoid of composure. Standing tall, I adjusted my suit jacket as I calmly replied, oh. And to address your question from 2 weeks ago, no, I am not thankful for your admission, but I do appreciate the clarity it brought. With a nod to the table, I bid everyone a good evening, assigning the check to Susan. As she sprang up and grabbed my arm, insisting I cover the bill, I met her gaze and uttered a quiet, firm no, thank you before departing. The chaos and uproar that followed as I exited the scene could be heard echoing behind me, with Susan calling my name, others expressing confusion, and suggestions emerging to split the bill. Ignoring the commotion, I pressed forward without looking back. The following day, the relentless stream of texts and calls from Susan ranged from pleas for forgiveness to threats of tarnishing my reputation. Opting to protect myself, I took the step to block her number. Despite her 2 unannounced visits to my home, I kept the door shut, refusing to engage. Artistic voice messages from her friends were left on their phones, which I regrettably deleted without listening to. A week later, one of her colleagues connected with me on LinkedIn, revealing that there had been an internal investigation at their workplace. This investigation was sparked by Susan's boss discovering that she had been dishonest about her job responsibilities, taking credit for projects she had no part in. Additionally, the man who had been inappropriate with her at the restaurant, a senior developer with whom Susan was involved with, secretly distanced himself from her following that dinner incident. 2 weeks after the chaotic birthday dinner, a knock on my door surprised me. I opened it to find an elderly couple standing hesitantly before me. The family resemblance was clear. They were Susan's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davis. I had briefly met them once before when they passed through town. Alex, her father, addressed me with a pained look. Baby, come in. With curiosity piqued, I welcomed them into my home, the atmosphere heavy with uncomfortable tension as we settled in the living room. We would like to apologize, her mother finally said. For Susan's behavior, for everything, her father nodded. She's been struggling since that night at the restaurant, lost her job, had to move back home with us. Sorry to hear that, I said, and a part of me genuinely meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want Susan to suffer. I just wanted her out of my life. No, don't apologize, her mother said firmly. She did this to herself. We've always known Susan could be materialistic. We probably indulged it too much when she was younger. Her father looked ashamed. We encouraged her to find someone financially stable, told her to use her looks while she had them. But we never thought she'd go this far. That explains some things. I remembered how her father had once joked about Susan landing a big fish when he found out I owned my own business. She told us what happened, her father continued. Not at first. She came home with some story about you humiliating her. But eventually, you got the truth out of her. Her mother reached for her. She retrieved an envelope from her purse and handed it to me. She's too embarrassed to face you herself. We wanted you to have this, she explained. Inside the envelope, I found a check for $925 along with a handwritten note. The note expressed apologies for the dress, gift basket, and everything else. "I'm sorry," to read. I gazed at the check, realizing that it wasn't about the money. It never had been. "We insisted that she take responsibility," her father elaborated. "We made her sell some of her designer items to repay you. It's a small step, but it's something." Grateful for their gesture, I thanked them and put the check back in the envelope. "I appreciate you making the effort to bring this to me," I said. I learned that she had chosen to delete all her social media accounts and focus on personal growth offline. On my end, business was thriving, and I cautiously re-entered the dating scene. Over coffee with a kindergarten teacher, I found genuine interest in my work as a contractor. Reflecting on the painful moment at the hotel ballroom when Susan had referred to me as her driver, I now realized how that experience had been a turning point for me. It had led me to appreciate the growth and new beginnings that followed. Some people reveal their true selves in critical moments, while others show their colors through small acts of cruelty. Regardless of the scenario, it's important to believe someone when they show you who they are for the first time. I truly wish I had heeded this advice earlier. As for the credit card situation, no, she couldn't have been charged with fraud since the card was legitimately given to her by me and reported as lost rather than stolen. The bank simply canceled and reissued the card. Admittedly, leaving her with the bill may have been seen as petty. However, after feeling like an ATM on wheels for 2 years, a small act of pettiness felt justified to me.